Hello everyone, welcome back to the 20 Dilf channel, and this is the 2020 Volkswagen T-Cross R-Line. And what I'm going to be doing in this video is doing a complete overview of this car, so driving it, what's under the bonnet, everything else about this car you're going to see in this video. So let's get straight into it. So let's start off with the front end of the T-Cross R-Line, where you'll notice it's very Volkswagen. It looks like a lot of other Volkswagen products. It reminds me of the Volkswagen Atlas that you can get over in America, but there's a couple of things about this car in particular that I love, and there's others that I absolutely hate it for. Like, I really do like this car, but I hate it equally as much. So that starts with the front end. So I think personally it's very stylish. You've got these lovely looking headlights with daytime runners that swoop into the chrome trim on the grille, and I think that looks awesome. I really like that little touch. R-Line logo on the grille there, and then your Volkswagen logo, which also acts as your radar cruise control sensor. And I mean, underneath that, that's where the issues start for me. So you've got these fog lights there, but personally I find them really disgusting because you see the design on the grille doesn't match at all to the, well, it kind of does, but not really, to the wavy looking weird design that they've got integrating the fog lights together. That little piece of black trim there, I don't like it at all. I actually think the fog lights make this car look really quite ugly from the front end. If they'd just ditched the fog lights or made them smaller or integrated them into the headlights, that would have looked so much better. I'm quite disappointed that they chose that as the final design, because I honestly think this car would look a million times better without those stupid fog lights there. But underneath that, you've got a little tiny grille there as well, and a little chrome trim underneath that as well. On the bonnet, you've got these little I suppose divots on either side, and it helps create a very angular kind of look for the bonnet. And I personally really like this about I really like that about this car. I think that looks really nice. Little complaint about the fog lights. I really wish they got rid of them, but we'll put that aside and move on to the side of the T-Cross, where it's bland relatively. I mean, you've got some nice sharp creases along the side. Obviously, it being a Volkswagen, they're really trying to copy that Audi styling. And look, I really like it. The side of this car looks quite nice, and yeah, I quite like it. I really don't understand what the go is behind the plastic cladding on the wheel arches. I really think nobody is ever taking one of these cars off-road. Let me tell you, it's front-wheel drive, and it really doesn't have the power or anything else to have any form of off-road capabilities. So look, Volkswagen, ditch the black plastics. It's completely unnecessary. This car will never see an off-road trail in its entire life, so cut it out. Nice little R-Line logo on the side, just to remind you that you have the R-Line, and that's pretty much about it. Moving down to the wheels, you've got 18-inch wheels. I forget the name of these wheels, but they look really nice. It's probably one of my favorite parts of this car. The wheels look really nice, and they suit the car pretty well, actually, surprisingly. What I don't like are the brakes that sit behind them. So these are straight off a Polo, because if you don't know, the T-Cross is actually based on the Polo platform. It sits about 14 centimeters longer, but the underpinnings of this car are straight from the Polo. So that goes for a variety of things. Obviously, the drivetrain, the gearbox, pretty much everything is straight out of a Polo. They did this to save costs, and also because, well, this is a small crossover. So, I mean, it made sense. You don't want to base this kind of car on a Golf platform. That's what the T-Rock's for. So yeah, but my major complaint is the brakes, because they didn't upgrade the brakes despite putting on 300 kilos over the Polo. So these brakes really weren't designed in the first place to deal with the extra weight. This is very evident when you drive this car for a little while, because you'll notice the brakes start to warp. The brake rotors on this car warped after 15,000 Ks, which is terrible. It's actually shocking that a brand new car is warping its own brake discs. Relatively, look, I mean, I was driving this car on my red Ps, so look, I occasionally gave it a bit now and again, but I cooled the brakes properly, did all the proper procedures for cooling the brakes, and I mean, I didn't even drive it that hard. I've driven this car pretty much how I drove all my other cars on my red Ps, never had a problem with my other cars. This one, not so, like this, I don't know, it just warped the brakes. I was very disappointed to see that. So absolute thumbs down for the brakes. I mean, they're very nice, they're responsive, they're actually very good brakes. They just don't last too long, and they're not designed for a car of this size. If we move past the brakes, let's move on to the rear of the Volkswagen T-Cross, and you'll see that there's a faux light bar style design on the rear here. It's an interesting design, but I really like how they've surrounded the taillights in this nice shiny black. I think that really does make this car look quite unique, and it stands out from the competitors as well. Like, this will go up against the Mazda CX-3, Toyota Yaris Cross, all of that, and I think it stands out. So I like the redesign. I think it looks pretty good. And obviously underneath that, you've got your T-Cross badge in the middle there. All looks very, very nice. It's a strange name. I don't know. I've never really grown on the name T-Cross. I think that's a very slack name. They could have thought of something better, I think. But obviously you've got your parking sensors below that. And then no sign of any exhaust tip, because that is hidden underneath the car. And it doesn't sound all that great, although I will start it up and rev it anyway. But yeah, it's it's really not going to deliver too much. Doesn't deliver much on the sound front of things, but look, it's okay. You don't buy this car because you want a sporty exhaust, although I do wish that with the I-Line models you got a slightly sportier sounding exhaust. Look, anyway, it doesn't matter. Let's move on to what's powering this thing. Under the bonnet you will find the 1-litre 3-cylinder, and this engine is designed for a Polo. It is not designed for a car that weighs 300 kilos more than a Polo, and Volkswagen hasn't given a tune to compensate. This car produces 85 kilowatts. 85 kilowatts, and I think less than 200 newton meters of torque, which is just, it's dreadful. It's terrible. You don't want that lack of power. Like, you can feel it. You're going onto the motorway, you put your foot flat, it's barely moving. Like, this car is just so slow. And Volkswagen actually had plans to bring the 1.5 litre 115 kilowatt version of this engine. I think it was a 4-cylinder actually. They bring a 1.5 litre into Australia, but COVID happened and then they decided they're not going to. So we're stuck with this. This is the only option engine you can get in Australia, which is underwhelming. It's very underwhelming. It really doesn't deliver any power at all. It's very fuel efficient, I'll give it that, but it constantly feels like it's struggling. It struggles off the line. It struggles when you're trying to merge into a motorway. It's really underpowered, and it's a real shame. They really should have put a tune on this engine at least to compensate for the 300 kilos this car has gained over the Polo. But no, they just gave us the Polo engine. So yeah, not very good at all. You can see where Volkswagen have cut costs on this car. This car really is a parts bin car. And look, that continues further into the interior, which we'll get into now. Stepping into the interior of the Volkswagen T-Cross R-Line, you will see immediately to greet you a little R-Line scuff plate right there. But then if you hop on in, you have this really nice steering wheel with leather perforations either side, and it looks really good. Up top, it's a full leather steering wheel, so it feels really nice. You got this silver kind of design. It's just a modern Volkswagen steering wheel. Little R-Line badge at the bottom there, and then you got your tiny little paddle shifters, which I hate. I really don't like this terrible little flimsy tiny design. It doesn't feel great. But yeah, with the R-Line you get paddle shifters. I should probably explain the spec lineup for this car. So you can get it in 3 configurations here in Australia. You can get the base model, which is the Life, which comes with pretty much no options at all. You can get the Style, which comes with LED headlights and a few other things, bigger wheels, 17-inch wheels. And then you can get the R-Line, which is just a Style with a cosmetic package. And then you can option the R-Line with one optional extra, which is the Sound and Vision package, which includes the digital display and the Beats audio system, which it's a very good audio system. I'll definitely give it that. And obviously the virtual cockpit straight out of Audi is also quite nice. It's just obviously reskinned, but yeah, that all works very well. Australia really missed out on some very desirable options like heated seats. We just get cloth seats. This is a fully optioned car and you're still getting cloth seats. They do have this really nice Alcantara on the side, but they're still cloth seats, and also you're lacking a sunroof. This is a fully optioned car and it doesn't have a sunroof. Bear in mind, this was $36,000 drive away. This was a dealer used demo car when it was new, so we got it slightly under market value. I think brand new to buy this car. It was 38 back in 2020. Now it's, I think, probably close to 40, just due to, I think the T-Cross has had a couple of price rises. It's actually sold really well in Australia. Don't know how. Anyway, if you turn on the ignition, you will see, oh, I should probably also mention it's got keyless start, keyless entry, all that, starting navigation. So you've got a couple of modes you can switch through. Might turn the aircon down a little bit. So you can kind of flick through, view your oil temp, a couple of other things, audio, navigation. Then if you press view, you can get a full little slideshow of some available dash options, which are nice. They're nice, but the only one I really drive with is this. Moving around, it's just scratchy plastics everywhere. There's barely any soft touch materials. There's a little bit of padding here, but it's just scratchy plastic everywhere. And yeah, it's it's not great. Like the whole dash and everything, there's this weird design on the dash as well. I don't even know what it's meant to be. It doesn't even resemble anything. It's just a couple of little lines. It's weird. It's very weird. And then the whole dash is just completely plastic. It's sad. It's very sad because Volkswagen could have done a lot better. But considering this is a budget car and everything, I mean, I suppose other cars in this segment probably feel the same quality wise, but it is a little bit disappointing to see that it's just so scratchy and really just not much attention to detail was paid in the interior. It just feels really bad. And look, that lack of attention to detail continues with the center console as well, more specifically the infotainment unit. Volkswagen like to tilt the infotainment unit to the driver. So whether it be a left-hand drive or right-hand drive car, you'll hop into a Golf, you'll hop into a Polo, you'll always notice that the infotainment screen is slightly tilted towards the driver, and that's obviously to make it a little bit easier to use for the driver, which is a really nice touch. I like how Volkswagen do that. How you can tell that they've really just been lazy with this car is the fact that this is a right-hand drive car and it's tilted towards the left-hand drive side. So they didn't bother to tilt it back for a right-hand drive market, and that's that kind of lack of attention to detail really frustrates me with this car. Also the fact that everything is pretty much from a Polo. And Volkswagen are usually very good at paying attention to detail, small little things Volkswagen have done in the past that just make it feel really, really special, and this car doesn't feel special at all. I mean, it's produced for the masses. No one who buys this car is really going to care, which look, it makes me sad because Volkswagen should be paying attention to detail like that. That's what defines Volkswagen. Like little attention to detail like that, solid cars, and this interior does not feel very solid, I'll be honest. Moving around to the seats, like I mentioned before, they're cloth. You can only get the cloth ones in Australia. However, they do have this nice little R logo embroidered into the seats, which I really like. As a bonus, they're also extremely comfortable, which I'm not complaining about. You got a manual handbrake, auto start-stop, little button there. You got your parking sensors, you got your auto park feature, hazard button, a couple of blank switches, obviously for higher option models that we don't get over here. And then you've got your aircon controls, which is digital and works very well. I'll be honest, it is a very nice system and it works very well. Wireless charging pad underneath that, nice little touch. 2 USB-A ports right there as well, so you can plug in your phone, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, all that typical stuff. Then underneath, in other markets, you can option this with a 6-speed manual. Ooh, 296, very nice. But in Australia, you can only get it with the 7-speed DSG, which is a very good gearbox, but it's paired with an engine with next to no power. So obviously dual clutch gearbox are very notorious for being very clunky. I go on about this in every dual clutch car that I review, but the fact that this is paired with an engine with such little torque and such little power really just dials it up, because you're setting off and then the engine's struggling, the gearbox is like, what do I do? So it's freaking out, you're freaking out because you're like, what? Like you put your foot down a little bit and it will do that, which is quite frustrating. But anyway, it's a very fast gearbox. It works very well. So I've got no real complaints about the DSG. 2 cup holders down here. You got your little tiny center console there. It's terrible. I would show the back seats a little bit, but there's currently quite a lot of stuff in there. But yeah, that's really about it. I mean, the interior is very underwhelming in this car, which is a shame because I love this car. But I really hate it at the same time. So it's just such a shame. But I think to get a real perspective of how I find this car to drive, I should go drive it now. Okay, so here we are in the Volkswagen T-Cross R-Line, and let's just get straight into it. So I'm just gonna keep it in drive to start with. To our little UE here. Look, a benefit of it being such a small car is it's got a very good turning circle, which I quite like about it. It's very easy to drive, which I'll just tell you straight away. But yeah, driving, I mean, if you're not really giving it some and you just want to go chill, I mean, the lack of power doesn't really bother you then, and you can always tune the car. Like there are, I think Unitronic offer a stage 1 which will get it up to 115 kilowatts, which is what the 1.5 produces. So I feel like doing that would significantly improve the way this car drove. But in terms of how it corners, like, because it's got bigger wheels, obviously it's got low profile tires, so it's actually got relatively good handling, which is surprising. It surprised me when I drove it. Like, you can really throw it into some corners if you want to, and it handles really well. It doesn't sway about like most crossovers. Like the Mazda CX-3 is just that car's very terrible when it comes to handling, but this actually really surprised me, and pleasantly surprised me at that. But we're coming up to our first little straight, so I'll pop it into sport manual, drop a couple gears. I won't even bother putting down the windows because it's not like you can hear any exhaust, but that's full flat. Still going. See, it's so slow. It is incredible. Oh dear, I've driven faster bicycles than this. Seriously, this is so slow. So slow. Yeah, it's a real letdown, but we're coming out to our other little... This is the main straight here, so drop a gear. You can't even hear the engine though, which is... Look, I wish in the R-Line, because... I mean, hang on. Still going. Yeah, it's very slow. It's so slow. Yeah, I mean, look, the only reason you would buy an R-Line is if you want to look like you've got a performance car, but you don't. You really don't. And that's, look, they don't even make a performance variant of the T-Cross. I think it would be hilarious if they made a T-Cross R. I think that would have been a very, very cool car. Very quirky, very unique, but they're not going to, unfortunately. So you're just stuck with the R-Line, and I mean, the R-Line, like, it should at least offer something purely more than just cosmetics, because a body kit doesn't add power. You don't all of a sudden own a sportier car because it's got a sportier body kit and bigger wheels. Like, that's not how a performance model is made. I mean, I know it's not a fully fledged performance model, but even still, I wish they just threw maybe a nicer sounding exhaust or something on it. I think that just to spice it up a little bit, differentiate it. Because I know Hyundai did that with the N lines, but look, anyway, we won't get into that. How is this car like to drive? Look, like I said, it corners very well, but the issue is just finding the power to go around the corner. You always have to be foot flat if you actually want to enjoy this car at all. And in a lot of cars, it's actually fun not having any power and having to go foot flat all the time, but in this, it really just begs for more power. It doesn't like being so slow. So look, that's a real negative. But in terms of how the car drives normally, if you're a normal person, which I mean most people are, like, you're not going to really be flying around corners and stuff in this car. That's not why you'd buy it. You buy it because it's a lifted up little crossover. So that's it. It's a Polo on stilts, as I like to say. And in terms of ride quality, it's very smooth. Even with the slightly larger wheels, yeah, it's a little bit harsher over bumps and stuff than the base model with the smaller wheels. But I don't have any complaints. It's very comfortable. The seats are very nice to sit in, and that's really that's really where this car starts to regain some of the points. So it's very pleasant to drive. It's very fuel efficient, which makes it a really, really good city car. And it's also easy to park. It's obviously got the auto park feature if you're a terrible parker. So look, there's a lot of benefits to driving this car, and it's a very pleasant drive. I've driven a lot of cars, and in a lot of cars I feel boring. In Volkswagens in particular, I've never felt bored driving a Volkswagen. No matter what model it is, Volkswagen always seem to allow there to be a lot of driver engagement, which is good. I like that about the brand. And it's no different with the T-Cross. The T-Cross actually feels really nice buy it if your kids are over the age of 6, I would say, because otherwise they won't have any leg room. Unless you're a particularly short parent, then it should be okay. But yeah, I'm 6'5", I have the seat all the way back and there's next to no leg room in the car. I've had friends in this car before and they always complain, there's no leg room, there's no leg room. Well, yeah, because it's a Polo on stilts. That's that's all it is. That's all it is. So yeah, in terms of getting people into the back, it's not the best, but I mean, yeah, if you've got a small young family, then it's okay. And then boot space as well, very, very good. It's a very practical car, like I said. So I suppose, what are my closing thoughts on this car? It's tricky. It's very tricky because this car, in a lot of ways, it's really terrible. And I'd find it hard to recommend, but in a lot of ways it makes up for that in the way the car drives, because it's a lot better than the other competitors in this segment. And I know this segment's bizarre, like it's a segment I'd never personally buy into because I just think all the cars in this segment are pretty dull, boring. But I think of the cars in this segment, this is by far the best. Definitely the best. You get really good value for money. Yes, you're not getting the proper true Volkswagen experience. It is just a parts bin car, so it doesn't feel like a Volkswagen should inside, but also it's got a lot of Volkswagen touches, like the DSG and everything. Just the way it drives, it feels like a Volkswagen, and I really like that about it. I really like it. So although I don't personally really like the way the car looks, or how it, the engine in it, I do really like the way it drives, and I think that is the most important thing. You can have an ugly car, but if it drives well, that's fine. All you really care about is how the car drives, and this car drives really well. It's also very practical, like I said, and I mean, I don't really have any complaints. Like, yes, there are a lot of negatives, but they're mainly, they don't impact how the car drives, apart from the lack of power, but that's it. So, look, if you wanted to buy into this segment, I would put the T-Cross at the top of your list because it's actually really nice and you can get them pretty cheap as well. Sitting in it as well, like it's so comfortable. What are you actually doing? Crazy NPCs. So yeah, look, it's very comfortable. It's very nice to sit in. I mean, I've driven the car pretty far before. I've driven it all the way to Thredbo before. I've taken it to Wiseman's Ferry before. I've done a lot of fun road trips on my Red Ps in this car, and I've never ever really found an issue apart from the lack of power. But I mean, apart from that, I think that's honestly it. I would highly recommend that you actually go and look at one of these cars if you're interested in buying a car from this segment. If not, I mean, I wouldn't put the T-Cross above the Tiguan or the T-Roc. I think they're better options in terms of if you're after a small SUV. The T-Roc maybe would suit that category a bit better because the Tiguan's a little bit bigger. T-Roc's a pretty good size in my opinion. But look, if you just want a little city run around, which is practical, you don't really care that the whole thing's made out of tin foil, then look, T-Cross is definitely for you. One thing I will also point out before I go, the infotainment system, I don't know what it is, but if anyone else has had this experience, the infotainment system on this car is rubbish. Even just driving to my little photo spot, it only takes me about 20 minutes to drive here. Oh my gosh, it crashed 3 times. The whole system just froze and restarted. It's done this ever since we picked this car up new, and I don't know if it's our system. We're taking it back to Volkswagen. They've done a software update, and then they came back to say, oh, the cord, the cord that you plug your phone into is bad. And then we swapped the cord. We've tried like 4 or 5 different cords. It always freezes, it always restarts. So I think it might just be a defective head unit, but if you've had a similar experience, please let me know. But again, that's something that really just drops points off this car, the fact that the head unit itself isn't functioning as it should. So anyway, this car comes with a 5-year warranty, so if you do have any dramas with it with the first few years of ownership, then Volkswagen's got you covered, so it's okay. But yeah, I think this car's interesting. I think my thoughts on this car have been pretty interesting. I don't actually know if I've helped anyone, but anyway, that's my review of the T-Cross. So if you want me to review a car next, then just let me know. But I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.